Tulsi, Kash, Patel, and Bobby Kennedy all faced down hostile senators in their confirmation hearings. Kash actually dropped a hard R. Things got very feisty. President Trump weighs in on the deadly plane crash over the Potomac. And because it is a day that ends in Y, a transvestite is caught trying to murder prominent Republicans. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. We got a new Michael And dropping. Long form interview. This one's going to be saucy, okay? This is going to cause people to react. For better or worse, there's going to be rending of garments, gnashing of teeth. We will have a trailer for that Michael And later in the show. If you want to see it, if you want to see all that stuff, you got to go to the Michael Knowles YouTube channel, smash and subscribe. Click that button, and then you will get all of the notifications, like videos about Kash Patel's hard R. This was hardcore. Kash Patel is up for the FBI director. Kash Patel is Indian of birth. I think I forget the name, the region of India that begins with a G. India is a very big place. But as a result, he has faced sometimes a little bit of discrimination, at the very least untoward comments, and he did not hesitate to mention some of those comments during his Senate confirmation hearing.
Fortunately, Senator, yes. I don't want to get into those details of my family here.
Oh, let's get into a few of them. Tell me about it.
Well, if you look at the record from January 6th, where I testified before that committee, because of my personal information being released by Congress, I was subjected to a direct and significant threat on my life. And I put that information in the record. I had to move. In that threat, I was called a detestable, and I'll apologize if I don't get it all right, but it's in the record, a detestable sand who had no right being in this country. You should go back to where you came from. You belong with your terrorist home friends. That's what was sent to me. That's just a piece of it. But that's nothing compared to what the men and women in law enforcement face every day. And that's why they have my support.
All right, we dipped the word, but I don't know why we did. I mean, it's in the congressional record. He said that he's been called a sand, N-I-G-G-E-R. Why bring this up at the hearing? He's bringing this up because this is going to be a tight vote. There are a lot of Democrats, even some Republicans, who don't want Kash Patel to have this job for reasons that we'll get to momentarily. And so he's going to play every card. In this case, he's going to play the race card. And I don't see why he shouldn't. This reminds me of Clarence Thomas, who had been dragged through the mud by Joe Biden, in fact, during his Supreme Court confirmation hearing. And then he finally put to rest all of the attacks on him when he sat before the Senate committee and he said, this is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves. And it's a message that if you don't kowtow to an old order, you'll be lynched. You'll be digitally lynched rather than hung from a tree. And the minute that Clarence Thomas said that, you could see Biden's head went straight down. He said, I don't want any part of this. And the vote went just fine for Justice Thomas. So I think that's what Kash Patel's doing here. And I think, okay, great. He is drawing attention to a legitimate wrong from Congress, which is that Congress doxed him. And then he had to move. He was getting so much hatred after the Senate and congressional Democrats were ginning up all this hate against Kash Patel. And just to drive the point home, he was called a sand, N-I-G-G-E-R. All right. Does that make a Democrat senator 5% more likely to vote for him? Does that make a squish Republican senator 5% more likely to vote for him? Great. These hearings can be won or lost on the margins. So I think he's throwing everything, including the kitchen sink. That's great. Now, the great assist yesterday during Patel's hearing came from Senator John Kennedy. My publisher, my editor, some years ago, sent me a quiz to see if you could identify who said a given quote, Senator John Kennedy or Foghorn Leghorn. And I did not do that well on it. Okay. Senator Kennedy, he's got a way with words, and he set up Kash Patel so beautifully on the chief argument against Patel's nomination, namely that Patel is a quote unquote conspiracy theorist.
Sounds to me like we need to get some new conspiracy theories because all the old ones turned out to be true.
Facts matter, Senator.
Yeah. I mean, conspiracy theorists are up something like 37-0.
And you can tell Patel just wants to let Kennedy do it. He doesn't want to say anything that could in any way seem like he's agreeing that conspiracy theories are true. But it's obviously the case. We were told, in fact, this conspiracy theory, the New York Times and the CIA just admitted was true. We were told that the COVID didn't leak from a laboratory in Wuhan. We were told that it came from a bad batch of bat soup, maybe a nasty little pangolin over at a wet market. And that wasn't true. It obviously leaked from a lab. The CIA agrees with that now, the New York Times. So Kennedy's right. I think it's about 37-0. The conspiracy theories are winning. And I remember I was interviewing some years ago a very, very senior member of the Trump administration, the first Trump administration. And we were chatting about the interview beforehand. And I said, I would like to hit this person, that person, and this person. Are you comfortable if I raise these questions? I don't want to put you in a bad spot. And the person I was interviewing, very, very senior member of the administration, said, oh, I certainly think you should raise those questions. I might not be able to answer, but you should definitely raise it. So that was the impression I got here from Kennedy. Kennedy was giving a big assist to Kash Patel. I thought he did very, very well. Now, Bobby Kennedy also showed up yesterday for his second day of confirmation hearings, and he was locked and loaded. He was a little bit scrappier yesterday, more inclined to fight, as we saw when he went after Bernie Sanders.
I'm going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee do what every other major country does? It's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, no,
and protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would no. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
because I had
receiver of pharmaceutical money
from workers all over this country. Workers,
you were the
not a nickel from corporate
Bernie,
tax.
you were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in the industry.
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right,
All right, so Bernie actually had the best response that he could have had to this attack from Bobby Kennedy. I gotta give it to him. Bernie's a shrewd politician. So he said, no, I didn't get PAC money. It wasn't from the executives. I wasn't being bought off by lobbyists. It was the workers in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, that doesn't make it all that much better. Obviously, Bernie Sanders is doing something that appeals to the workers in the pharmaceutical industry that needs reform, that most people agree needs reform. So I guess it's a little better as a matter of optics that it's not just rich Uncle Pennybags from the C-suite at Big Pharma. But still, I thought, even with Bernie's good response, I thought this was one of the best attacks from Bobby Kennedy. He has struggled a little bit in these confirmation hearings, but all in, I think he'll probably get through, which brings us to arguably the most controversial nominee that President Trump has put up. And we will talk about who that nominee is in one moment. First, I want to tell you about Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles. This country was founded on freedom. I am reliably informed. Freedom from a country that forced us to buy overpriced tea. And then when we dumped their tea into the ocean, they tried blockading us. How'd that work for them? Not great. Now is the time to throw your overpriced big wireless contract overboard too. Throw it into the harbor with the tea. You do not need to pay $100 a month just to get a free phone. That's an expensive free phone. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, says no to inflated prices. With a qualifying plan of just $45 a month, you can choose an iPhone 14 or a Samsung Galaxy for $0. This is for premium service, the best 5G network out there. Unlimited talk, text, 25 gigs of data, more than you're ever going to need. Mobile hotspot at a fraction of the price of the big guys, all on America's most dependable 5G network. Get your iPhone 14 or Samsung Galaxy for $0 by visiting puretalk.com/Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S. Switching is easy. You go to puretalk.com/Knowles, claim your new iPhone or Galaxy with qualifying purchase from Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Tulsi Gabbard, baby. Here we go. She made her debut yesterday at the confirmation hearings. eloquent, good-looking, intelligent, great record of service. So, of course, the Democrats hate her guts. Former Democrat, ran for president as a Democrat, was a Democrat congressman. The Democrats hate her. And some Republicans are skeptical of her, too, because she does not toe the old uniparty line. For decades now in Washington, there has more or less been a consensus on foreign policy, not always on domestic policy, but on foreign policy. The old line in 2009, 2010 was, they told me that if I voted for John McCain, we'd get another war in the Middle East, and that's exactly what happened. I voted for John McCain, we got another war in the Middle East. The two parties have pursued the same policy. And in part, this makes sense because nations and empires need to have grand strategy that doesn't change every 4 years. But sometimes the American people put in a change agent, and that's what they've done with Trump. And Trump has followed that mandate from the American people. He's nominated Tulsi Gabbard to be the top spy. Here's why she says she wants the job.
The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once, but twice. And yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics.
Love her. Greatest confirmation hearing for a DNI in my lifetime, since the DNI position has existed. Really good stuff. This is exactly what we need. Of all the corruption in the government, the corruption in the intelligence community over the last 10 years has been perhaps the most egregious. You have the intel agencies and the DOJ conspiring with the Democrats to cook up a bunch of nonsense on Trump to prevent him from being elected the first time. Then you got the deep state and the intel agencies conspiring to try to undermine Trump's entire administration. Then you got the deep state and all the intel agencies conspiring to suggest that Trump is some threat to national security in 2020. They just keep doing it. They've said this about Tulsi. They've said Tulsi's a Russian asset. Does Tulsi Gabbard sound like a KGB stooge to you? She sounds really intelligent to me. She sounds like she's identifying real problems that have been festering for decades. The DOJ, FBI, CIA spying on people. In the case, that last example she mentioned, spying on my churches, okay? The traditional Latin Mass, the Mass of the Ages that existed from roughly 600 AD as the major form of the Roman Rite, all the way to after the Second Vatican Council, and still exists in a lot of places. Yeah, that bothers me a lot. And so, no, I don't want some regular uniparty apparatchik. I want Tulsi. And the squish Democrats, or rather the hardcore Democrats, are going to hate her. The squish Republicans better tread very, very carefully. The American people voted for change, specifically on the IC. Vote against Tulsi at your own peril. This is a big issue for people. And if some Republican senators don't get the message, they're going to be left behind. Now, in part, Tulsi was called a Russian stooge because she raised a point about the Middle East that is a point that I've made on this show for many, many years. Namely, that while all the neocons and the establishment foreign policy folks have been clamoring for regime change in Syria, actually that old Bashar Assad wasn't so bad. And sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Here is Tulsi defending her record.
I shed no tears for the fall of the Assad regime. But today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance, and who has already begun to persecute and kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
It shouldn't
is
be.
certainly
and
not
I
in our
understand, and
interests.
I appreciate.
Okay, I understand. That's too much common sense, Miss Gabbard. Please stop mentioning common sense. Why does the Uniparty, why does the foreign policy establishment hate Iran so much? And why have they been so obsessed with getting rid of Bashar Assad? Because we have alliances in the Middle East. And because it's good for Turkey, our longstanding NATO ally, if Assad goes down. Okay, I get why Turkey wanted Assad to go down. It's good for the state of Israel for Assad to go down because Assad was a puppet of Iran. Iran is the chief enemy of the state of Israel. I get why Israel wants Assad to go down. It's good for Saudi Arabia. These are all three longstanding allies of the United States. I get why Saudi Arabia wants Assad to go down because Saudi Arabia's chief opponent is also Iran. But why do we care so much? That's the question. Is it really, for all of Bashar Assad's sins, the guy actually did protect religious minorities, much more so than these radical Islamists are going to. He protected Christians a lot more than these radical Islamists are going to. Tulsi's raising that question. That's a common sense question. That's going to appeal to a lot of American people. It's going to make the foreign policy establishment in the Beltway, it's going to make their head explode. But these are basic questions. Sometimes people get so lost in grand strategy, so lost. It's like Dr. Strangelove, you know? They can explain in all sorts of abstract theories why it's great to have some psycho-Islamist take over a major country in the Middle East. But I think we need to inject a little more common sense again. And I think that's exactly what Tulsi's DNI appointment is about. Now, Trump himself came out and spoke yesterday, took over the press conference, and he wasted no time blaming the policies of the past administration for that plane crash over the Potomac.
I want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine?
Can you imagine that? And this is what Trump is so good at. I mentioned this yesterday. He can really paint a picture. But this is shocking even to me. I follow news very closely, obviously, got my nose in politics. The FAA made a point intentionally to hire people who were mentally or insane, according to that news report that the president just read. We're not talking about diversity like you hire a couple more black guys or you get a lady in the air traffic control room. Severe intellectual disabilities? What? I think most Americans, even many Democrats, are going to hear that. They say, you got to be kidding me. And then, not to put too fine a point on it, Trump said that Pete Buttigieg, Joe Biden's transportation secretary, is largely responsible.
The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation is government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity.
You might like this. You might like Trump coming out day after a major tragedy and blaming Buttigieg and the policies of the past administration. You might like that. You might not like that. You might, and I suspect there are a lot of people in this category, pretend not to like that, but secretly like that. The one thing you cannot do is deny that that is a big part of why he got elected. That guy, the guy who tells the emperor that he has no clothes, that guy got elected by most Americans. Most people would say, oh, we can't talk about it. Oh, I don't know. We can't. Correlation's not causation. I mean, the FAA did try to hire severely intellectually incapacitated people, but, we can't necessarily. And Trump comes out there, he says, hey, the past administration made it a point to hire retarded people and lunatics to run this agency. No wonder there are problems. And Buttigieg is a complete disaster. You might say, well, that's nasty. He shouldn't do that. It's not statesmanlike. It's not presidential. Please don't tell me that isn't a big part of why people elected President Trump. Please. And part of the reason they were inclined to elect him for things like that is because the government has been run so incompetently, with such corruption, so dishonestly for so long. My next Michael And is going to irritate a lot of people. I think a lot of people are going to like it, but it's going to irritate a lot of people. Probably the biggest, not the biggest one of these interviews I ever did, but the one that caused the most controversy was when I sat down with Nala Ray, who was the most prominent performer in the entire world, and then she decided to quit and become a Christian and totally change her life. And I sat down with her right after she made that decision, and a lot of people did not believe her. They had a lot of follow-up questions with her. Well, Nala Ray returns. This time, she is joined by her husband to address the rumors, to address certain lies, to answer certain criticisms. Check out this teaser.
Really shook the internet the first time you came on. I got in so much trouble for talking to you.
I know you haven't. I appreciate that.
They say very nasty things about you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we know.
You were a lying, deceiving prostitute.
You said that you lied about everything. People were tagging me in it on social media, and they said, see, Michael, here's proof that she lied to you.
Everything I've said on podcasts is complete clickbait.
Why do you think people want you to be lying?
That happened to her. I can't believe that it's real, because then that means I can change my ways and still get saved.
She was brought up in the church. Is this mental illness?
People have criticized you because they say, you made all this money. Where's the penance? They say you should give all your money away.
Watch the episode. It's coming out tomorrow on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel. Watch the uncensored ad-free version and subscribe and watch on Daily Wire Plus. My favorite comment yesterday is from the Numbers Workshop, Norm's Music, who says, Elizabeth Warren's voice makes RFK sound like Pavarotti. Que bella cosa, nah, you're not al sole. I agree with you. Her voice just does something to my inner ear and to my soul that is deeply painful. I totally agree with you. Okay, speaking of the deadly crash over the Potomac, we're getting a little bit more information now. Forbes is reporting that the air tower had been understaffed. So Forbes is reporting former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg called Trump's claim that the FAA was made unsafe by DEI hiring practices despicable. Notice he doesn't say it's false. He just says it's despicable. And criticized him for what he called his move to, quote, fire and suspend some of the key personnel who helped keep our skies safe. But Forbes goes on and says, the air traffic controller who was handling the helicopters near the airport Wednesday night was also directing commercial planes in takeoff and landing, jobs that are usually assigned to two separate people, according to an internal preliminary Federal Aviation Administration safety report seen by the Times. The tower at the airport has been understaffed for years, the Times reported. So if we're playing the blame game, Buttigieg says it's Trump's fault. Trump says it's Buttigieg's fault. Well, here's some good evidence that it was Buttigieg and Biden's fault if the tower at the airport has been understaffed for years. So what are the other theories? There's some theories now that possibly the helicopter flew into the plane intentionally. Again, I haven't seen a lot of evidence for this. The helicopter was flying about 100 feet above where he was supposed to be flying. There are all sorts of rumors coming out. I'm trying to be a little circumspect here and trying to be cautious. But in this case, you're going to hear a lot of people screeching about how Trump blamed Buttigieg and Biden. You're not going to see a lot of people screeching about how Buttigieg did the exact same thing to Trump. And this is it. You know, the left does this all the time. it gets us back to the Kash Patel hearing. The left plays the race card all the time, but then when we play the race card, we start to hem and haw and clutch our pearls. Why? They would do it to us. If it's going to get our guy through and there's nothing intrinsically immoral about it, let's go for it. Donald Trump is pointing out that the policies at the FAA in recent years have been absolutely disastrous. You know the left would be saying that about Trump if the roles were reversed here. Why not? Why not point it out? A lot of the reason Trump got elected is because he is willing to get in the muck and the dirt and fight in a way that Democrats fight that Republicans traditionally have not been willing to fight. You're seeing this right now with tariffs. President Trump posts to Truth Social last night. He says, the idea that BRICS countries, BRICS are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the US dollar, which we stand by and watch, is over. We are going to require a commitment from these seemingly hostile countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor back any other currency to replace the mighty US dollar, or they will face 100% tariffs. There will be no trade with the United States and should expect to say goodbye to selling into this wonderful U.S. economy. They can go find another sucker nation. There is no chance that BRICS will replace the U.S. dollar in international trade or anywhere else, and any country that tries should say hello to tariffs and goodbye to America. This is not just Trump shooting from the hip or being reflexive or reactionary. This is a really important part of U.S. grand strategy. Okay, there have been threats for years that the BRICS countries are going to create a currency that could weaken the US dollar. That would be very, very bad for us for a whole host of reasons. How we borrow money, how the whole US economy functions. So Trump is saying, you're not going to get that. And if you try, we're going to place 100% tariffs, which helps you to understand why Trump came so hard on Colombia when Colombia refused the flight of illegal aliens, the criminals that we shipped out of our country back to Colombia. Colombia said, we're not going to accept the airplanes. And Trump said, okay, well, you're going to get a 25% tariff on all your goods. It's going to jump to 50% next week if you don't shape up. And we're going to place some economic sanctions on you. We're going to freeze your visas and your passports. We're going to come down with the hammer, okay? And what did Colombia do? An hour later, Colombia caved, and the president of Colombia sent the presidential jet to pick up the criminals. So that's good. That's the art of the deal. But what was that about? A lot of people at the time said, man, Trump is really coming down hard without much reason. Well, I think probably coming down hard with the tariffs on Colombia is really more about this. It's about Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, the more important economies. He had to punish Colombia to prove he would do it. It's kind of like dropping the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Why drop the bomb? In part to end the war, also to let the Soviet Union know that we have the bomb and you better watch out. I think that's what the tariffs in Colombia was largely about. So now you're one of these BRICS nations. You got to be thinking, look, maybe he's bluffing. Maybe there's only a 10% chance he really follows through. But can I take that chance? You're already seeing. A lot of people doubted that Trump would really wield tariffs for his foreign policy. He's already done it in spades. Now, a lot of people on the left are not taking this lying down. And because it's a day that ends in Y, a transvestite has been arrested for trying to murder top Republicans. I found this because there was a story in local news that said Franklin County residents react to Massachusetts woman arrested in D.C. But then here's the first paragraph. It's a little bit weird. South Deerfield, Mass. A woman who lived in South Deerfield was arrested on Monday in Washington, D.C. after police say he was threatening to kill some of Trump's cabinet members. Wait, what? A woman, okay, well, you see at the end why you got the disagreement between the noun and the pronoun. It says this story previously identified the defendant as Ryan Michael English, the name used in charging documents, but in a memo Wednesday, English's attorney clarified that her client uses the name Riley Jane. Okay. So a transvestite fella, a transgender, someone who thinks it really is the opposite sex, has behaved in a crazy way. Wow. Stop the presses. Man bites dog. Pull over your car. Wow. Who is about the most basic aspects of human nature is behaving in a way. Boy golly. Shocking. The only people who are shocked by this are the media. The only people who are shocked by this are the Democrat operatives. It's the left. No one else with any common sense is shocked by this. And this guy apparently wanted to kill Pete Hegseth over at the Pentagon wanted to kill Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, wanted to kill Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. It's always the ones you most expect. And when the Democrats were in charge, they wouldn't follow common sense. In fact, they would try to hire the people who were crazy or who had intellectual deficiencies that would compromise their ability to do their job. Under the Trump administration, look, we got to find a place for everyone in society. People who have mental problems, people who are a little bit slower, people who are a little bit crazy. But you don't want them in charge of really important jobs, and you don't want them to be free to come down and try to murder the sitting cabinet. We're just not going to do that. Now, speaking of Pete Hegseth just posted for the first time yesterday a video from the Pentagon, from his office, explaining what is going on, specifically with the crash over the Potomac that involved a military helicopter.
All right, update this morning. Just got off the phone with the Southcom commander and the chairman, the Joint Chiefs, talking about our efforts at Guantanamo Bay. That is ongoing. We're leaning forward on supporting the president's directive to make sure that we have a location for violent criminal illegals as they are deported out of the country. No one's going to wait on the Defense Department, and we're working that in real time. But I also wanted to give an update on the tragedy that happened last night here in Washington, D.C., and provide a little bit more information as we are actively working to investigate and understand what occurred and why. At about 8:48 last night, a UH-60 assigned to the U.S. Army Aviation Brigade in the Military District of Washington, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, collided tragically with a civilian airliner. The unit involved, the Army unit involved, was Bravo Company 12th Aviation Battalion at Fort Belvoir. It was an annual proficiency training flight. And when we look at the crew, and not all kin have been notified, so we're going to withhold ranks and names at this point. We do know on our side who was involved.
Trump vindicated once again on one of the biggest charges against him with these appointees. One of the biggest knocks on him. I heard it even from people on the right too. They say, Trump's just filling up his whole administration with the lineup of Fox News. Can't he find anyone else who isn't on TV? Why is he putting all these media figures in the administration? You know, it turns out there is an advantage to having good communicators in government, especially at a time when people don't trust the government in both parties, especially at a time when a guy gets elected president in part because the institutions of government have lost people's trust. Maybe it's smart to have a charismatic, good communicator who's got a lot of TV experience who can speak directly to the American people. Maybe that's a good hiring decision. You know, personnel is policy. And Trump always talks about he has the best people. This administration, the second administration, seems to be even better than the first. There were some clunkers in the first administration. This time around, though, this is good stuff. It is very important when all sorts of theories are flying. What happened with this military helicopter? All sorts of other crazy stories that we didn't even really get a chance to talk about, of Haitian asylum seekers who are being shipped out of the country and they're taking a stopover at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba first, and then we're sending them back. When there's all of this misinformation out there, it's very helpful to have people who know their way around a camera and a microphone, who can cut through the extremely dishonest media to speak to the American people. You know, new and streaming right now on DailyWire Plus is the making of Am I Racist? Clearing the Air. You can get exclusive behind-the-scenes look at how Matt Walsh, director Justin Folk, and the cast and crew created the film that became a box office hit comedy and the #1 doc of the decade. There's only one way to see it. That's at dailywire.com. With your Daily Wire Plus membership. If you've not seen Am I Racist yet, you got to start there. Then stream the new special, The Making of Am I Racist? Clearing the Air. Watch it all now, only on Daily Wire Plus. Finally, we've arrived at my favorite time of the week when I get to hear from you in the mailbag. Mailbag is sponsored by Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles. Claim your new iPhone or Galaxy with qualifying purchase. Take it away.
Hello, Michael. Joel here. So many times I've gone to send you a message and found out moments later that you actually addressed the exact point I was going to ask about. But for once, I think I finally have something that I don't think you've fully discussed. President Biden clearly has the constitutional authority to grant pardons, and I appreciate that, but it seems he has taken it a bit further than any other president previously have, with blanket pardons and pardons for things that haven't even happened yet. Not to mention pardoning his own son for all the a decade's worth of time. What do you think can be done? What do you think should be done to curb or somehow decrease the power of the ability of the president to just issue blanket pardons to everybody who agrees with him upon leaving office? Or should we do anything about it? Should we just allow it to stand? And if so, I guess what should Trump's strategy be in relation to this? Should he just turn around and tit for tat do the same thing 4 years from now when he's on his way out the door and just set the precedent that that's what every president will do from now on? Just curious what your thoughts are on that. Love the show. Thanks for taking my question.
Excellent question. No, I do think we have to circumscribe the pardon power. I am for a robust pardon power. I'm for a robust executive. But as you point out, when Jerry Ford pardoned Richard Nixon, it was for a specific action. It didn't require Nixon to admit guilt, but it was for a specific thing. It was for the Watergate scandal. When Jimmy Carter pardoned the draft dodgers from Vietnam, he was pardoning people in a blanket way, all sorts of people that he wasn't specifying. But it was at least for a specific thing. In this case, Joe Biden just said, well, I'm going to pardon my kid for anything that he might have done at the federal level over the last 10 years. Now, we started at 10 years before because that's when Hunter Biden started working for Burisma, the crooked Ukraine oil and natural gas company that was paying bribes to the Biden family for U.S. policy in Ukraine. So we do know what the pardons were for, but Biden wouldn't specify. It was any crime he may or may not have committed over the last 10 years. And then on the way out, he extended that to much of the rest of his family. That's crazy. I think a very simple way to circumscribe the pardon power is just for a court or for the legislature to say, the president can pardon whoever he wants at the federal level, but it's got to be for a crime. You can't just pardon him for anything. You know, he might have jaywalked. He might have committed a federal felony of jaywalking. I don't think that's a felony. And so he's off the hook. You know, it's got to be for a specific crime, because otherwise you establish this awful precedent of the president just having to preemptively pardon everyone around him, as if political retribution is going to be the norm, make us more like a banana republic, which the Democrats started. I mean, they made that deal, but hopefully the country doesn't accept it. Next question.
Hey, Michael. I have a question about standing up for your values. I'm a city cop in the South, and I recently refused to complete an online work training called Valuing Diversity. The course said that using fake transgender pronouns was correct and appropriate, and directed officers to celebrate, encourage, and value the beliefs of others, stressing that tolerance alone wasn't good enough. I expressed concern that the course was biased and that parts of it weren't factually true. For this, I was taken off street duty and grilled by internal affairs, who told me to sign off on the class or they'd take my badge and gun. I was able to come to an agreement that I'd keep my job and help rewrite the course to be more neutral, but only after being punished and having my livelihood threatened. What is your advice for people like me, who are in serious professions like police or military, who are ordered to compromise their values or lie as a matter of policy? Thanks for your time. Love the show. God bless.
This is always a matter of prudence. You know, I think a lot of people want a really clear ideological answer here, which is, well, when it's these 5 things that they're requiring of you, then, you know, if they make you put your pronouns in your email, then you got to quit. But if they only make you put your pronouns on a name tag at a conference, then you don't have to quit. This is just a matter of prudence, I think. You don't want to do anything that is intrinsically evil or immoral, but if it's just having to put up with some nonsense, everyone has to put up with some nonsense at work. I work at a very conservative company, and I was employee number 5, and I've helped build the culture at this very company. And there are still things about the way the company, that any company is run, that you don't always love to do. You don't always, maybe you want to take lunch at this time, or maybe you don't want to have to work in this way, or maybe, you know, that's just life. So I just think you have to make a practical and a prudential calculation. Is the juice worth the squeeze anymore? Next question.
Hello, Mayflower Mike. Bryson was taken here, and I need some advice on how to handle a situation at work. I'm a public school teacher. Yes, a based public school teacher. I recently found out that a trans-identifying student will be joining my class roster who goes by pronouns and a name that are different than who this child truly is. My question is how to best handle this within my professional capacity as a teacher. I know I'm not legally required to call the student by her preferred pronouns or nickname, but I need help knowing if I should hold firm and call her by her birth name and correct pronouns at the risk of creating drama, or call the student by her preferred name. In the past, I've called students by their preferred name and justified it as a nickname while avoiding pronouns altogether. But I feel like that is still going against my beliefs. Any help would be appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that would be lying. I don't think you should lie. I think that would be a line in the sand where I wouldn't pretend. It's really evil to the kid, even if the kid thinks that he or she wants to be trans. It's just abusive to the kid, and I think you will regret that someday. And it's also just dishonest. It's a lie. So for me, I couldn't do it. Next question.
Hi, Michael. I love your show. You had mentioned that Bill Maher is ethnically Jewish, and so his taking Jesus' name in vain is significant. He was actually raised Catholic. I believe his mother was Jewish before she converted to Catholicism in order to marry his father, apparently under some duress. But he was raised Catholic and was baptized Catholic. So he is, in fact, a lapsed Catholic, and we should pray for him.
That's great to know. We got to get Bill Maher back, man. I didn't realize that. Someone wrote in after I mentioned Bill Maher that he's a Catholic. All right, let's go, baby. We got to get Bill Maher on the show. We got to get him. We got to rosary pill him. Let's go. I'm into it, man. Okay, let's see. There was one more voice mailbag I wanted to do, but I don't think it was pulled, so we'll have to try to get it next week. A written mailbag question from Mark. Dear Mr. Knowles, I'm in a bit of a conundrum. I'm a mid-20s devout Catholic, there you go, male, and I've been courting an early 20s woman for the past 6 months who happens to be LDS, Mormon. Both our families are fond of one another, and everything's been going great. Recently, we talked about making our relationship official and what we both want to come out of it. We both agree that we're dating to get married, want to have several kids, and agree on key political beliefs and values. When it comes to our faiths, I obviously do not have any interest in converting, but she thankfully is open to conversion. Nice. In talking about faiths, she confessed that she isn't just LDS, she comes from FLDS. Yes, polygamists. It really brought into context when I had dinner with her family, and she refers to women other than her mother as mother. She has expressed to me that even if she converts and we have a Catholic wedding, she still wants me to have at least one more wife so she can have a sister wife and so we can have a big family. Wow. That was after talking her down from the 4 wives that her father has. I care for her deeply and believe she and I can have a great future together. However, polygamy is obviously not acceptable in the Catholic Church. Please help. Is this a Dear Penthouse letter? I don't know. There are probably a lot of guys who would like to hear this from their fiance or girlfriend. But yes, of course, you can't do that. If you're going to be Catholic and raise the kids Catholic, then you can't have sister wives. You could do that if you're LDS, or FLDS. You could do that if you're Muslim, but probably not Catholic. So I guess I would ask her, say, hey, that's really nice that you're offering me a harem. Like lots of ladies. And I kind of get it. If she was raised that way, then it's quite normal for her, and she probably does want companionship. But you say, look, if you're going to convert to Catholicism, that means more than just like going to church on Sunday. And that means you are going to live your whole life in accordance with this religion. You know, even on Tuesday afternoon, even on Friday morning, not just on Sunday morning. And so part of the religion is you can't have more than one wife. So, thanks for the offer. I appreciate it, but that's not going to work. Okay, that's our show. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. We have the member block, the membrum segmentum coming up. It is Fake Headline Friday. You need to help me get the headlines, but you have to do it over at DailyWire Plus. If you are the hoi polloi on YouTube, it's not going to cut it. We'll see you over there.